Okay then, so in this video I thought I'd just do a quick recap on object literal notation and also just demo why this isn't always the best approach to creating objects when we're creating a lot of objects of the same kind of data, and you'll see exactly what I mean by that shortly. So first of all, notice I've created this chapter 15 folder. I've got index.html with a sandbox.js file hooked up right here, and I'm viewing this page in the browser. Now I've also kept the weather app around because later on in the chapter towards the end we'll be applying our object-oriented principles to that project. So then, object literal notation. We've seen all this before, but I'm going to recap you now. If I wanted to create a new user object, I'd do something like this. Const user1 is equal to a new object, and then inside we'd specify different properties such as a username. In this case it's going to be Ryu, and maybe an email as well, and that will be ryu@thenetninja.co.uk, awesome email address. And then maybe we'd have a few different methods as well, a login method, and that is literally going to say console.log and the user logged in. And we might also have a logout method which is going to say console.log the user logged out. So very simple methods, but this is just demonstrating object literal notation, and we have seen all this before in a previous chapter. So now if I wanted to access one of these properties, I could do. I'm going to say console.log and then user1.email and also user1.username, and I should see these in the console over here, and I can see those right here. And I could also call one of these methods, for example login, by saying user1.login. Oops, like that. Okay, so this logs this to the console. So this is all working. But what if at some point down the line I want to create another user object, user2? Then how would I do that? Well, I would pretty much write all of this stuff out again for user2. So let me just copy that and paste it down here. We'll call this user2, and we'll change this to Chun-Li and the email to chun.li@thenetninja.co.uk. Login is going to remain the same and logout is going to remain the same as well, because these two methods are going to be the same for every user. So now again, I could do exactly the same as this, which I will do. I could change this to user2 and user2 over here, and finally over here. So now we're getting the email and the username from user2, and also using the login method from user2. Save it, and we see all that right here. So again, this is all working. And what if I wanted a third user? Well, again, I would write out exactly the same object. But this isn't making our code very maintainable. We're rewriting a lot of the same code. You see things like this, the login and the logout, they're identical in each object, and we're just repeating ourselves. And even the property names are exactly the same in each object. Again, we're repeating ourselves. And if we want to create a lot of user objects, it's going to get even more messy just copying and pasting this and changing the different values over and over again. So this approach of using object literal notation to create new users over and over again is not the most efficient way. Yeah, it's good for creating one or two objects, but if you're creating many objects of the same type and you quickly want to be able to generate those objects, maybe it's not the best way. It would be much nicer and easier if every time we want to create a new user object, we could do something like this. Const, and then we'll call it user3 this time, set it equal to a new user, pass in the email, which is going to be Sean@thenetninja.co.uk, and also pass in the username, which is going to be Sean. And then that would create us a new user object which would look much like this, with these two values for the username and email, and also the login and the logout method. Now, we've seen this kind of syntax before when we've said something like new date or new error or new XML HTTP request object, and all it does for us is create a new object. And it uses this constructor to create that object with all of those methods and properties. Now, obviously, in this case, this is not going to work because there's no user constructor built in to the JavaScript language, but we can make one. And this is where object-oriented programming is going to give us a leg up. It's going to help us to easily create objects for different types of data, for example, a user object, which is going to make our code much leaner and more reusable. And we're going to see exactly how we can do this in the next lecture.